This $2.8 billion settlement in the House versus NCAA lawsuit is getting approval from all the conferences. The Big Ten is expected to sign on with this week. College athletics will be different from now on, moving forward. So, what does this mean for future expansion for the Big Ten? I'll try and tie these two events together. Locked On Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked On Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, coming up on 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer. And I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get started. So we're going to talk about these huge settlement costs and how it affects everybody and everything. Plus, we have some Friday night lights for the Big Ten. TV schedules are coming out, and our Big Ten Classics and live action with the baseball tournament this weekend. I'm going to keep this light and simple because I don't want to bog down our visit together with all these legalese details regarding the House versus NCAA lawsuit. But it does affect every Big Ten team and a conference directly. So I want to discuss this with you, especially how it might affect the future makeup or expansion of the Big Ten. Quick thumbnail on the case in case you've been tuned out to the legal news that's been out there. The NCAA is in trouble. All right, there's this lawsuit. It's an antitrust lawsuit. And is accusing the NCAA of suppressing student athletes' ability to earn money before name, image, and likeness became a thing in existence here. Now, had this suit continued, the NCAA would have lost, and they would have probably lost about $4 billion, which means the NCAA would have ceased to exist. Some people say, hey, that's a good thing, right? Well, anyway, they're in survival mode right now. And they're taking everybody with them. And by everybody, I mean every school and every conference that plays any kind of athletics out there. So instead, they've been negotiating a $2.77 billion settlement. They were going to lose over $4 billion. They got it down to 2.77. It's going to turn into a revenue share plan. And I'll explain some of that in a moment as well. But this is the plan we've been telling you about for weeks here on Locked On Big Ten, where all major schools are going to have to carve out $20 million a year for the next 10 years, so over $200 million to fund past, current, and future student athletes in a new revenue share plan that will change college athletics forever. This week, the ACC and the Big 12, they've already signed on. All right, where do we sign? We got to do this. This is a necessary evil. It is happening. And that's despite the fact that smaller schools in their conference are going, whoa, we can't afford this. We can't afford it. Big schools can't afford this. The Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to sign this bill this week as well, or sign on to this settlement as well. The Pac-12 will sign it as well. They'll have all their schools like USC and Oregon. They're going to sign this as Pac-12 schools because this suit's been going on since back when the Pac-12 was a thing. So we'll take care of that. Now, after that's all done, next week, the NCAA Board of Governors will meet, and they will sign off on this plan next week. And that is needed for final approval to get this thing moving and get it moving forward and put it into action. Now, as I alluded to, smaller schools are pretty upset with this action. They say they're afraid of bearing a larger percentage of this financial settlement. I mean, after all, not everyone brings in $70 to $100 million of TV money every year. No, they do not. So we'll shake this out a little bit. Here's how the NCAA plans to handle the settlement payments of almost $2.8 billion over 10 years. And this is the last little bit of kind of getting in the weeds, and then we'll move on. They're going to start off with a reduction of expenses. First of all, budget cuts across the board at the NCAA office. They also have some insurance some catastrophic insurance for this kind of stuff. They'll take care of that. And they do have some reserve funds. I mean, they've been making billions of dollars off the NCAA basketball tournament for years. So they do have some money. This will cover about $1.2 billion. The rest is going to come from withholding distributions to 352 Division I schools. So the NCAA overall is going to cover 41% of this settlement. The Power 5 conferences are going to cover 24%. The other 5 major college football conferences with a group of 5, they're going to cover 10%. And the championship subdivision will cover 14%. And then non-Division I conferences are going to have to pay 12%. There's a lot of little schools out there that go, hey, man, we don't even have a football program. Why are we paying all this money? You know, where's a school like the Citadel going to be able to come up with all this money? Or a Wofford, Georgia State? How are these schools going to come up with this money? They're not. They're going to have to cut programs. If they had a dozen or 15 sports, they're going to cut that down to like 4. And Title IX, they got to have half women and half men. So it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for a lot of the smaller schools for sure. Anyway, that's about the limit of me getting into the minutia and the weeds of this, just so that you understand what's going on and how this is coming into effect here this week and next week. And you know, my question now is, how is this going to affect a school that the Big Ten may have circled for future expansion, for like Florida State, for example? We talk about Florida State a lot here because I think they're on a very, very short list to come to the Big Ten someday. As you know, Florida State and Clemson are already embroiled in another lawsuit with the ACC, and the ACC is countersuing them. There's lawsuits all over the place. Hundreds of millions of dollars at stake in all these cases. This is why your tuition's going up. So, obviously, Florida State and the ACC schools are trying to get out of the horrible media rights deal that they have with the ACC. What if they lose that suit, by the way? And there's been some movement and some date changes and some announcements here, but we'll get into that later on, maybe even next week. But things are moving forward with this stuff. And we always assumed that maybe Florida State thought they had such a great case that they were going to win, and then they were going to be free, and they were going to be able to go to wherever they want, go to the Big Ten. What if they lose that case? What if they, they can't handle a $150 million exit fee that's in the contract to get out of the ACC, and hundreds of millions of dollars in broadcast rights money that the ACC thinks it is owed by owning the broadcast rights of home Florida State games for like the next 12 years. And now, due to this NCAA settlement, Florida State, like other Power 5 schools, are also going to have to shell out $20 million a year over the next 10 years to $200 million. $150 million exit fees, hundreds of thousands in broadcast rights money not coming in, $200 million for revenue share. This is a significant, we're talking like, it's going to be close to like, off the top of my head, somewhere between $500 million and $1 billion over the next several years. It's incredible. What this does do, I think scenarios like this make Florida State even more desperate to get out of the ACC, get out of the shackles with the financial struggles they have there, go to a Big Ten where they can, at least instead of getting $30 million a year in TV money, then they can go get $70 to $100 million a year because it's a better conference. Keep in mind, right now, they only bring in a paltry $35 million a year from the ACC contract. $20 million of that's going out the door for revenue sharing. And it's like Florida State ceases to be a profitable organization. And I'm just using them as an example. This is across the board with a lot of these schools. And we're just talking about some of the big boy schools here. Little guy has no chance. So if Florida State thought their current financial situation was not sustainable now, being an ACC member, what do they think now moving forward? And what about these smaller schools? And I mean, by smaller, I mean financially speaking, like a Virginia or a Duke. Are you kidding me? Wake Forest. How about those schools? They're going to be begging to get out of the ACC. They seem like they were kind of, Wake Forest and Duke, kind of the quiet ones. We're just kind of seeing how this played out. They got to get out of there. How about in the Big 12? They're not embroiled in any lawsuit like the ACC is, but I don't know how well they hold together after Texas and Oklahoma leaves. I mean, can Houston or BYU or even can a Cincinnati afford this revenue share plan and paying out all this settlement money and $20 million a year? I don't know that they can. All of them are going to be begging for bigger conferences to take them in for their own survival. And again, I'm going to go back to my original argument. If you were an everyday or here at Locked On Big Ten, you know my ultimate theory is we're down to two superpower conferences, some version of the Big Ten, some version of the SEC, and even if they grow to like 24 to 30 teams, and that's it. If you're not in there, I don't know how you're going to make it. Because even the teams that are in there are going to be, it's going to be tough to be meeting budgets each and every year. But you got to get in or you're left out. And if you're left out, you're going to have to drastically reduce the number of athletic sports that, you're going to participate in, if at all. It's a new day and it's here. Love your thoughts on how you think this would affect expansion, realignment, the finances, revenue sharing. We always take your comments. Don't forget, we're at Twitter at TalkBig10 10. Our website is TalkBig10 10.com. Comments on YouTube, always welcome as well. Hey, coming up on tomorrow's podcast, you want to check this out. We're going to look back into Jim Harbaugh's final days at Michigan, who he was mad at, his thought process, whether he really wanted to stay at Michigan or go take the Los Angeles Chargers job. So tune in tomorrow to Locked On Big Ten for that. Be sure to subscribe. Click it. It's free. And you're in this Big Ten club. Subscribe and follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcast. That way you get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Coming up, Friday Night Lights. TV schedules are coming out, plus recruiting news for Penn State. All that right here on Locked On Big Ten. Yahoo Finance. You got to check this out. This is cool. I've often thought to myself, I've got my bank statements here. I got my investment app here, or 401k there. I would like everything to be in one place. And you can do that with Yahoo Finance. Consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis that you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor, whether you're a seasoned investor or whether you need that extra guidance. It is right there at your fingertips at Yahoo Finance. It gives you all the tools and the data that you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination. Just check it out for a comprehensive for financial news and analysis. Visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, share and follow and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget to check out our website, TalkBig10 10.com. Merchandise information, all of our podcasts are right there at your fingertips. There was some TV news this week. First of all, it looks like ESPN's dance card is a little full. Some of their college football playoff games will have to air on TNT. Thought that was pretty interesting. Got more on that when it becomes more in focus for us. Meanwhile, all 4 of the new West Coast Big Ten teams coming into the league this year, they're going to be featured on Fox and their Sports College Football Friday night package. Their 12-game slate will feature 9 Big Ten matchups, or Big Ten teams. USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon will each have at least one home game on Friday night. In fact, Oregon, UCLA, Washington, Rutgers, Michigan, and Purdue will all have 2 Friday night appearances on the Friday night package on Fox. Washington visits Rutgers on September 27th in its first conference roadie and hosts the UCLA Bruins on November 15th. In fact, the Bruins, they have back-to-back Friday night tilts, and they host Kirk Ferentz and the Iowa Hawkeyes on November 8th and then play Washington in Seattle. Michigan State heads to Oregon on October 4th, and the Ducks head to Purdue on the 18th. So really spreading it around. USC hosts Rutgers on October 25th, and that kickoff will be at 11 p.m. Eastern time. That's 8 o'clock Pacific because Fox has a World Series game earlier in the evening. Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State, Minnesota, and Wisconsin will not have Friday night games this year. Hey, have you ever heard of Messiah Mikens? It's one of the best running backs in the country in the 2026 recruiting class. And he's ranked as the number 2 player in Pennsylvania and the number 1 running back in the state. And he has just reconfirmed his commitment to Penn State. Good news there for Nittany Lion fans. He just posted a picture of Beaver Stadium on Twitter. That's good for the Nittany Lions because he's been receiving a lot of offers. People are trying to pull him away. Notre Dame is interested, Oregon, and Wisconsin as well. As you know, anytime we talk about recruiting on Locked On Big Ten, it's always brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. More changes with the Iowa women's basketball program. Of course, following Caitlin Clark's amazing career over there, head coach Lisa Bluter decided to retire after 24 years at the helm back on May 13th. Longtime assistant Jenny Fitzgerald is also retiring. Just announced that she's going to retire after 24 years. She had been there with Bluter the whole time and then 8 years prior at Drake. Of course, you remember Jan Jansen, another Iowa assistant. She was the one that was given the head coaching job soon after Bluter retired. So it's going to be different there in Iowa. I know they got some good recruits coming in there too. I mean, nobody can say they're going to be the next Caitlin Clark. But anyway, I think they're going to try and keep the ball rolling there at Iowa after that tremendous season they had this year. Hey, I've asked you before, in the daytime, do you have your TV on? Do you watch like Fox Sports, FS1, ESPN, all the talking heads screaming and yelling at each other every day? You turn the volume down? Does it get irritating? Well, I got another suggestion for you. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, and streaming 24/7. It's on YouTube. It's also on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app that we're on as well. And this show will occasionally make a cameo appearance over there as well. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, coming up, on Thursdays, we like to look ahead to the Big Ten Network and what they're going to air, whether it be Big Ten Classics, live action, features. Of course, we've got the Big Ten baseball tournament going on. We'll run down the schedule a little bit. All that's coming up right here in 1 minute on Locked On Big Ten. FanDuel, let's talk about it. Let's go. It's winner take all time in the NBA, Stanley Cup playoffs. We're rolling. There's also baseball, by the way. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you could bet on point spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. What we got for you? Tonight, Thursday night, Pacers at Celtics. Whoa, what a game one that was, right? Pacers had it. They had it right there, and then they blew it. They look like an inexperienced young team. But the Celtics, if you paid attention to them in the postseason for game twos, they're blowing them. I mean, they're basically a 500 team at home. They blow their second game of the series. The Pacers know in their head they can play with them. Celtics are 8.5-point favorites. Take the Pacers on this one. I think it's going to be a lot closer. It's not going to be an 8.5-point game. They nudged up the number at 224.5. I'm system play here. I'm taking the over on every game in this series. I'll come out ahead more than I won't. So check it all out on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, FanDuel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. All right, it is time for our feature here. We're going to look into the weekend on the Big Ten Network. Again, we're not affiliated with the Big Ten Network. We just talk about a lot of the same stuff. All right, you get the inside analysis here at your fingertips on a podcast every day. But we're all interested in the events of the Big Ten, so we'll let you know what they have on the airwaves over the weekend. I'm going to put this on the screen. If you're on audio only, I will do my best to explain what's going on here and get to the bottom of all of this. All right, so we're going to pick it up on Friday, May 24th. We're going to pick it up at 11 a.m. Eastern. The big story featuring Nebraska volleyball. Now, this is cool because you can take a look at the storied history of Nebraska volleyball. Head coach John Cook, Coach Terry Petit, former players and fans and more on what volleyball means to Nebraska. If you're not in Nebraska, you don't realize. I mean, there's Nebraska football. Volleyball's a big deal. Don't you remember? Was it August or September? I think it was August. They had that match at Memorial Stadium where it was sold out, like 100,000 people watching a volleyball game, a volleyball match. And they got a behind-the-scenes look on all that. That's 11 o'clock Eastern on Friday. At 3 o'clock, we go to the Big Ten baseball tournament. We don't have the matchups yet. So 3 o'clock and 8 o'clock. As of the taping of this podcast, we don't have the matchups yet. But they'll have a 3 o'clock Eastern and an 8 o'clock Eastern game there. Then on Saturday at 10 a.m., we'll have the semifinals for the Big Ten tournament, the first game of the day. Again, teams to be announced as we move forward with all that. 10 a.m. Eastern. Afterward, they'll have their At the Plate feature. These are good. This particular one at 1 o'clock, learn how Michigan State head coach Sharonda Donald Kelly has changed the culture of Spartan softball. So that's there. And then 1:30, they've got another one at the plate. That is Minnesota's John Anderson, reflecting on his time as the head coach for over 40 years with the Golden Gophers. So I thought I'd throw that out there as well. And then at 2 o'clock Eastern time, we've got the other semifinal game of the Big Ten tournament, 2 o'clock Eastern, followed by another feature of At the Plate at 5 o'clock. Hear how Iowa native Brody Brecht is living out his childhood dream playing for the Hawkeyes, among other things. They're going to do another story here. You can learn about Kaylee America Rodriguez's road to recovery after her cancer diagnosis and her determination to play softball again with the Wolverines. And then at 5:30, have you ever seen the Campus Eats? They go around, show all these restaurants and diners on campus. This is a best of version there. And then we still got a couple more things we want to look at here on Saturday. So we'll flip the screen at 6 p.m. We've got Big Ten baseball. We've got another game in case with the way the elimination works out. We got another semifinal game if necessary at 6 o'clock. And then they got the game break at 9 and at 10 o'clock, semifinal number 4, if necessary, at 10 o'clock. Now, on Sunday, here we go. We'll kick off the day early in the day at 8:30 in the morning. Big Ten moment. It's the Buckeyes walk-off against the Wolverines. Wolverines hate this. Buckeye fans love it. You can hear from Coach Urban Meyer and Chris Wormley and Tom Rinaldi as they look back on the Buckeyes' dramatic double overtime win over the Wolverines in 2016. Then at noon, Big Ten baseball, they'll re-air the semifinal. And then at 3 o'clock Eastern time, our Big Ten baseball championship from the tournament, 3 o'clock Eastern. So check that out. That's what's coming up on the Big Ten network here this weekend. Give you a heads up. Again, tomorrow, we are going to look at the final days of Jim Harbaugh at Michigan and his decision-making process. Some stories have come out this week. It's very interesting who he trusted and who he didn't. You can probably guess on some of that. So we'll do that on your pod. If you have a Michigan fan or alum in your family, make sure they catch tomorrow's podcast. That is going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. So we're looking forward to that as well. And in the meantime, if you want to reach out to me and interact with me, don't forget I'm on Twitter at X at TalkBig10 10. Don't forget comments on YouTube and our website, TalkBig10 10.com. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app. You'll get the latest episode of Locked On Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Check out another podcast of Locked On Big Ten after this one. And don't forget our friends at Locked On Sports Today here for you 24/7. All that coming up. Can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Craig Sheeman for Locked On Big Ten.